Welcome to the Jack Mountain Bushcraft Podcast, episode 115.
Welcome to the Jack Mountain Bushcraft Podcast with your host, Jack Mountain Bushcraft School founder and Master Main Guide, Tim Smith.
I'm your host, Tim Smith. I'm a registered Master Main Guide and have been a full-time outdoor instructor and guide since founding the Jack Mountain Bushcraft School in 1999. We help people become more skilled, more knowledgeable, more experienced, and more confident in the natural world through our bushcraft and guide training semester programs and multi-week canoe and snowshoe expeditions. You can check out the show notes to all of our podcasts at blog.jackmtn.com. If you're interested in learning more about our college-accredited and GI Bill-approved programs, visit the Jack Mountain Bushcraft School on the web at jackmtn.com. And check out our online network and digital learning academy at bushcraftschool.com. Hello and welcome back to the Jack Mountain Bushcraft Podcast. This is episode number 115. I'm your host, Tim Smith, and I'm joined today by Tessa Story. How are we, Tessa?
Oh, you know, sore.
Tessa and I are spending the day, as are all of the people on the course, kind of licking our wounds because we had a long day yesterday.
Yeah.
We paddled about 31 miles with some crazy winds, and today is a day of rest and sorely needed. I woke up this morning and physically couldn't move for...
Yep, I woke up in the middle of the night with my arms stuck under my body, and stretching that out didn't feel great.
Right? Yeah, it was hard. But just got back after a week on the river. We managed to pull a last-minute location change on the trip. This whole spring, the last week or so of April and all of May thus far, and it's currently May 15th? 16th.
Oh.
May 16th as we're recording this, but the entire month of May so far characterized by ridiculous winds and seemingly all out of the north, right?
Yeah.
Or northwest. And about 10 years ago, I did a trip. We were scheduled to go down the St. John River. And about 10 years ago, I did a trip on the St. John, and it was a similar weather pattern. And it was just paddling straight into the headwind every single day. And when I saw the 10-day forecast for our recent trip, I said, I really don't want to repeat that experience. So imagine Tim in a fully loaded canoe going down a class 2 rapid, pretty quick water. And if I didn't paddle, the wind was so strong it would blow me back upstream. So we're talking like 30, 35 mile an hour winds, and it's just incredibly, incredibly frustrated. So we switched gears and went to a different river where we wouldn't be headed into the wind. And we made it almost the whole way without paddling into a giant headwind. But all that ended yesterday.
Yeah. At the end of our trip.
But yeah, we were out for a week. Great trip. We've got some other content that we're going to publish. I think we might publish just like a separate podcast episode just of nature sounds that we recorded on the trip. You know, birds, spring peepers, bald eagles, loons, you know, all sorts of cool stuff, and maybe give you guys a taste of what it's like to kind of travel with us when we're out in a remote location. So the trips, we love to canoe on our home drainage on the Aroostook, and we love to go up to the headwaters and come down. And for my money, I think it's combines kind of the best of Maine canoeing. A couple of big open lakes, a couple of real skinny, narrow streams to pull down, and some bigger rivers. And it's just, I think I'm biased, obviously, but it's my favorite trip to do. How about you?
Well, this is the second time I've done the Aroostook, so it was interesting to see the differences. We're about 2 weeks earlier this year than we did it last year. The water's a lot higher, so there was a lot less poling. And, I mean, I was in the bow of your boat a lot. I was in the bow of other people's boats while they were trying to learn how to steer. We kind of had a rough time teaching everybody paddle strokes and everything because the wind has been so strong the entire time, this entire course.
Yeah, it's hard. I think when people are learning canoeing, like the first couple of days, first day poling, first day paddling, maybe first 2 days of each, it's really good to have sort of a Goldilocks weather system sitting over you. Not a ton of wind, kind of sunny. Water's not super cold, and we haven't had any. Well, we had some sun,
a little bit,
but we've had enormous winds and cold air, cold water. And that's just hard. It's hard for people to learn.
I'm sure it's been frustrating from a student perspective, but from an instructor perspective, it's been incredibly challenging. Whenever somebody asks, oh, am I doing this right? Am I doing this paddle stroke right? And it's just kind of like, well, just don't take your paddle out of the water or we're going to blow to shore. So I can't really get into the correct way to do it.
Yeah, totally. You know? It's like, it's everything you can do to not get spun. So all of like the finer points of paddle strokes and the finer points of, you know, and maybe you watch like a Becky Mason canoe ballet video and you're like, how come all I'm doing is just sweating and grunting, trying not to get spun in the wind? But hopefully as we slide into spring here, the trees are starting to leaf out. So maybe spring is finally on its way. Hopefully we'll get a couple of nice days on the water where we can really focus and dial in on, you know, paddle strokes and pole strokes and things. You know, it's so windy, you get lined up you're doing ferries and things with a pole, you get lined up perfectly with a little chute, and then you get a 35 mile an hour gust of wind and it blows you 15 feet out of the way. And it's just hard, and there's no way around it. There's no way to make it easy. There's no way to make it better. But the one thing it does have going for it is that it's authentic, right? Yeah. These are the challenges you face in the real world.
It's real life.
Yeah. It'd be nice to have like a couple of days where we could teach people the basics before we get into the ridiculous weather. But it's Maine. That's northern Maine canoeing, and Mother Nature hates us and wants us dead.
Yeah.
A couple other things. It was so windy yesterday. We're paddling down the river, and we had a good portion of the trip. We had it as a tailwind. So big high water, big winds, big tailwinds. So it was pushing us along pretty good. So we're paddling down, and the trees are it was probably 35, I think gusting to 45 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And the trees were bending back and forth. And by late in the day, we watched a tree just bend over and snap like a big, 10 to 12 inch diameter fir tree, 10 to 12 inches at the base, 80 feet tall, and it just snaps and comes crashing into the river.
Yeah, it sounded kind of like gunshots at first, and turned around and you just see this huge tree coming down. Pretty wild. Pretty wild.
None of us were like close enough where we were worried about getting hit by it.
But that's why we didn't stay at the campsite that we passed shortly thereafter.
Yeah.
We stopped for a lunch, and I did not trust any of the trees around us during that lunch.
Trees were having like a 35% bend, right? It wasn't, it doesn't fill you with confidence.
No.
So we saw that. That was super, super interesting. Other things about this trip, we got to pull super narrow streams. There's an outlet to one of the lakes, and it's barely wide enough to float a boat. And you've probably seen it. We've got a couple videos on our site of us going down that specific stream, and just super narrow. And that's super interesting for people to do. And especially, we're in big boats. We're in 18 and 20 foot long boats, and the stream is like 5 feet wide. So the idea of like spinning the boat or something, you just can't do it, because you can't even get more than like 15 degrees off in line with the current before you're just going to pin yourself up on rocks. Couple other things. Everybody got the swing of baking in a reflector oven for the first time, and that's always fun. It always kind of turns a big light on for people when they realize that they can make their own bread in the field.
Oh, yeah. We ate a lot of bannock bread on this trip.
A lot of bannock. A lot of food. Good. We ate, as usual. You and I ate very well, and I think some of the students ate pretty well as well.
I think they were pretty excited about the Aroostook Guide basket.
Oh, the Aroostook Guide, the Aroostook River Guide grill
basket. Yeah.
A new product.
Tell me about the Aroostook River Guide grill basket, Tim.
Well, I don't have anything online written up about it, but a couple of years ago, we like to grill meats in the field. If you catch a fish, they're great to grill. If you bring a steak or something. And we grill things hanging vertically next to the fire. So sort of like if you ever go to a shawarma place, that Middle Eastern bit where the heat source is to the side, not below the meat. And we hang them vertically. And you can use like regular barbecue grill baskets for that, like a fish basket or something. But those things are awful to pack. So now we make our own. And this trip, it finally got a name, the Aroostook River Guide Grill Basket. And maybe I'll put I have a photo
or
of it.
ARG for short.
Maybe I'll put a photo of it. Maybe that'll be the. I've got a photo of it. Maybe I'll make that the image for this podcast on the web.
Yeah, I saw the Aroostook River Guide grill basket. Please, several people on this trip.
Everybody was super excited about it. And essentially, it's a couple of like cake drying or cooling racks connected with key rings, and then you hang that with the chain. And the nice thing about it is it fits in the inside of the mouth of the smaller of the blue barrels that we use a lot when we're canoeing. So it's very portable, and that's why we designed it as such. And I'd like to jokingly say that I've had those things in my kitchen for 30 years, and it only took me 29 years and 11 months to figure out, I could use that. So I might be slow, but I'm weak. But trips really are where stuff gets real. I like to say that expeditions are where stupid ideas go to die. And we talk about it with the students a lot, that when we're out and you are trying to cover miles and all those things, like, you don't really need to have to learn how to paddle or pole a canoe if we're going to be out for 20 minutes on a pond or 20 minutes on the local river. You can kind of stumble your way through it. But when you're covering miles day after day after day, that's where all the minutia of technique and being efficient with your biomechanics, that's where all those things really start to be super important, because it helps you to do less work over time. So yesterday, during the Death March portion of the trip, I think we covered about 31 miles. And a day like that is where, that's a lot of paddle strokes. So any tiny improvements you can make to your efficiency will have a huge benefit for you. Not only will you get there faster, but you still have something in the tank at the end of the day. So, we spend a lot of time talking about biomechanics and efficiency and eliminating the parts of your paddle stroke that aren't helping you, and treating it like a pathologist would, and cutting away the parts that aren't helping you. And it takes a long day and a good amount of fatigue for those lessons to really sink in. And I think we had that yesterday.
Absolutely.
And if the way that my body feels today is any indicator, we definitely had that yesterday.
Yeah. We're getting in shape for the rest of the season. That was what yesterday was.
But fatigue is just a great teacher. I always say that fatigue is the fourth best teacher. I say experience is the third best teacher. Pain is the second best teacher. A person only touches a hot wood stove once. And the best teacher, in my opinion, is Mrs. Petrowski, my first grade teacher from Clark Elementary School in Amherst, New Hampshire in 1974.
I'd like to nominate Mrs. Bronner, my kindergarten teacher.
One other cool thing we did this trip is one of the knots and knot systems that we learned is how to tie lining bridles onto canoes in order to line them down tricky sections of water. And until you actually have to use it in the field, it's another one of those, why am I learning this? This seems to be a complete waste of time. But we actually lined canoes through a tricky section of water on this trip. And it worked amazingly well. We didn't lose any gear, we didn't lose any boats, we didn't lose any people. And it takes something that in any other situation, if you tried to run it with a paddle, you're going to get swept out into the waves or into the corner or into a sweeper or a strainer. But it makes it slow and controlled and very methodical and no drama, no risk. And that's a great thing to have. So
it gives you a good amount of teamwork. It's pretty fun to pass along the boats to everybody and watch it just go down the line.
Yeah, totally. So 2 types of lining, right? Regular lining where you walk your own boat down. But what we did this trip, because the footing was really dodgy, was station lining. And that's where we tie on the lining bridles and lower the canoe down to somebody else who's stationary and then lower it down. And I think we had 4 or 5 people. So we would lower the canoe down and around this super tight hairpin corner, handing it off to the next person. If you're not having to move and you're not going to lose your footing, you're not going to slip. It's just a super safe and efficient way to do that. Mm-hmm. So I thought it was great. All in all, super happy with the trip. Super happy with how people performed. And just a little bit of a Masardis miracle. So at the end of the day, we had, just a couple of miles left. So the original plan was to paddle back to the field school and unload everything. But because people were so fatigued at the end of the day, like, when people are just tired, they're out of gas, they're getting a little crabby. So I came up with
Don't talk about me like that.
I came up with the idea that maybe Tessa and I would paddle ahead, get back to the field school, grab the van, and meet him at the Masardis boat launch, so we wouldn't have to carry all the gear up the hill in addition to the 31-mile paddling day with a crazy, crazy wind. So we took off. We paddled to the Masardis boat launch ahead of everybody, and didn't really have a plan as to how we were going to get back to get the van and the trailer to go pick everybody up. So
we had a few ideas.
We had some ideas. I thought about showing a little bit of leg and, flagging down a truck out on Route 11 and having them take me back.
Yeah, but that's how you get kidnapped, Tim.
But didn't have to. Turns out one of my neighbors was there. He was about to throw a line in. And a huge thank you to Dana Lyons. Dana pulled up to the boat launch, and I said, hey, any chance we could give you $20 to just give us a ride? We just live 5 miles down the road. And he knew where we lived. We'd seen each other around. We hadn't officially met before yesterday. But he looked at us and he said, I'm happy to take you there, but I won't take any money.
Yeah, I don't need the $20, but I'll take you.
And it's just another Masardis miracle,
it's
right?
Really, really great.
The beauty of living in a small town, everybody recognizes each other, and he was just happy to help. So
yeah, he had really just pulled up. I saw him get his rod out of his truck, and we're windblown and pretty tired from the journey. And we get out and we're like, hey, what would be better than fishing? Giving us a ride to our house.
Just looking, imagine two people that are just looking haggard
and
coming up off the
as
river.
We're getting out of the water, a lid blows off of the barrel, and I have to chase it across the field.
Yeah,
and one of the pads
winds.
flew out of the boat, and
Crazy.
Yeah, it was just wild.
So we went and went back, got the van, and everybody else paddled an extra mile to a separate takeout. And that extra mile, they said, was harder than the other 30 miles of the trip combined because they were going right into this 40-mile-an-hour wind.
We were pretty lucky for most of it, honestly. I mean, it was very, very windy, but we had the tailwind, so we were going screaming fast, even though we had to work pretty hard to not get blown into shore because it was sort of just swirling.
Yeah,
it was still, we were still going quickly, so that was nice. But then we were like, oh, we'll go to this second takeout point. And as soon as we kind of rounded the corner, Tim was like, no. And we pulled back to the boat launch. Yeah.
But it all worked out. Everybody got off the water. Everybody's happy. We're all kind of licking our wounds today. Sore muscles, blisters. Everything in the woods, if it's not a park, if it's real woods, and especially in northern Maine, the woods, everything in the woods is pokey and sharp. Oof. So I've got like 200 little micro cuts on my hands and miniature puncture wounds. And the nice thing, after a week on the river, I washed my hands like 11 times. They're still dirty, but they're slowly getting a little bit cleaner.
Well, it's kind of cool because my cup that I'm holding is just permanently gripped in my hand because I can't open my hand anymore. So I'm always ready for more coffee.
The hardships of life on the trail. But even though it's hard, it still was an awesome trip. Lots of good, cheap laughs. We got some great photos, some solid video, and we'll be sharing that stuff as we...
it was gorgeous.
Yeah, as we get some more time. So not a long time back at the field school here. Probably head out. We got 2 days where we're going to really work intensively on paddling and poling. We've got an awesome local rapid where we're going to go and really dial in on the particulars of poling maneuvers in whitewater, those sorts of things, and then we'll probably head out onto a big lake and dial in all of our named paddle strokes, that sorts of a thing. And we still have to do all of our canoe rescue and safety stuff. We've been kind of...
It's been cold.
Yeah, we've been dragging our feet hoping the water warms up a little bit because... when people really want to flip canoes and then do tea rescues and things, they're even more excited about it when the water's 41 degrees Fahrenheit.
And the wind gusts are 35 and the air temperature is 40. All good.
So we're hoping to get a little shift in the weather here. But it looks, the 10-day, it looks like it's coming in another day and a half. So what we have to look forward to then, once the weather shifts, is it'll be warm and then the bugs come out.
Yeah.
So... yeah.
But everyone thinks that they're ready for that. They're like, oh, I'll take the bugs. But I'm pretty sure as soon as the bugs come out, everybody will be like, oh, I missed the cold.
Yeah, my experience is 20 minutes into bug season, everybody wants winter back.
Yeah. But I'm personally looking forward to the bugs right now, but talk to me again next week.
Yep, I've experienced it many times in my years, and it just hits you like a slap in the face. You're used to just breathing normally, and then all of a sudden you're breathing in hordes of black flies and mosquitoes. But it is what it is. Maybe that's the price to pay to live in such a beautiful place.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, well, that kind of wraps up discussing our first trip, and we'll probably, at the end of our second trip, at the end of this course, we got 2 weeks to go, we'll probably do this again. But that's why we didn't release a podcast on Saturday, because we were out in the middle of nowhere, and you probably won't hear from us again for about 2 weeks, because we're going to be gone in the woods again, and totally off the grid, nothing, so we couldn't upload anything even if we wanted to. Second thing I want to talk about today is Don't Believe the Hype. Famous rap song. In my instance, from my approach, we've been super fortunate over the years at Jack Mountain where if you do Google searches for like the 10 best bushcraft schools or the 10 best wilderness survival schools, we've come up a lot in those sorts of lists. And, I'm not going to lie, it's kind of cool seeing your name listed among the big players in the industry, and it's kind of cool. It's a good little ego boost, and it feels kind of good. But here's the dirty little secret about all that. Even though we've been in, members of maybe 30 of those articles over the years, for none of those articles did they send anybody out to take a course and review it. So the way that those things work is that someone uses the Google machine to determine who are the top 10, and maybe they're going by how many...
Who shows up first on Google?
Yeah, basically, I think that's it. Or, how many likes you have on social media, that sort of a thing. So it's kind of a big game, and as somebody who's been in this industry now full-time for 24 plus years, don't believe it. Don't believe that hype. And if you're the proprietor, say, of a smaller school, this is what, and you really want to get, or a guide service or something, and you really want to get that sort of media coverage, it's not based on then sending somebody out to, say, every school and then, having some criteria by which they're going to judge and then rank. It's really just mimicking or copying what they find on Google or on other search engines. So, don't believe it. If someone's always consistently ranked near the top, maybe that just means they have a really good web designer, or maybe that means they have a really good marketing person. But the end result that you would receive if you were, say, a student to attend one of those schools, it's going to be different for everybody. Different people are looking for different things. Years ago, I had a post about, I think it was a blog post, and the title was, "We're number one," because I think we were number one in one of those lists, and I joked about it a little bit, because in order to be number one, we'll use the analogy of a race. Say if we had a running race, we got 10 people, and we're having a running race. Then at the finish line, we could all say, okay, this person did it the fastest, they're number one. This person was second, they're number two. But in the instance of, say, wilderness skills schools or bushcraft schools, survival schools, whatever, there's none of that consensus where everybody's running the same race. So imagine if you're trying to do rankings and everybody's running a different race course, a different length of a race in different locations with different goals. You can't really come up with the number 1 through 10 then. It's just, everything's just a little bit different, right? It's not easy to say, oh, this person's or this school or whatever is number one, they're the best, because different race, different course, different goals. So just wanted to pass that along. I get tired of seeing those, who's number one, who's number two, and especially on, say, internet, like message boards. It's kind of just fanboys talking about their heroes or their whatever. You read somebody's book and you think you know them and they're your hero and you want to promote them and whatever. Human nature.
The moral of the story is never have heroes. Never have heroes.
I have a book, Baa Black Sheep. Pappy Boyington, World War II Marine Corps fighter ace, right? And he liked the bottle quite a bit, this guy, but I think he shot down more bad guys in the Pacific than anybody else. But at the back cover in big bold print, it says, he's quoted, and it says, "Show me a hero and I'll prove to you that he's a bum." So he was not enamored with the whole hero culture.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
That's a true hero right there.
True hero.
Or true bum.
So I got that book because when I was a kid, they had a TV show that kind of like made him a hero, him and his Black Sheep Squadron. And it's super interesting. Great book. So quick story from that book. These guys would go out all night, World War II, right? And they had a bombing run the next day. They'd go out drinking all night. And I think it was Boyington in the book. So these old World War II planes had like a single stick coming up, right? That's how they would control it. You know, push forward, you go down, pull back, you go up, left, right, whatever.
I played that game.
So this guy would he'd bring a ball of string in with him, and he would tie the stick off to different points inside the cockpit. So when they got up to altitude, maybe they had a couple hours to go for their bombing run, he'd tell the other guys like, okay, turn your radios up all the way. I'm going to fall asleep. He's alone in this little plane. They didn't have autopilot. He says, I'm going to go to sleep for a little bit. If I start, veering in any direction, scream and wake me up. It says, I don't know if it's true or not, but
Can we try that with the canoes?
Yeah, definitely. I was going to do it with the van.
Nice.
So the moral of the story is don't believe the hype. Yeah, I think we beat that.
And always bring lots of string so that you can take a nap.
Lots of string. Well, that's all I've got. I think it's about time for my afternoon nap to go lay down and lick my wounds a bit more.
Yep.
Thank you again for listening and joining us here. We'll probably catch us again in 2 weeks when we'll wrap up the 2023 Wilderness Canoe Expedition semester. If you're interested in interacting with us, you can definitely do so. Jump on our private online community at bushcraftschool.com. We've got online courses there you can take. Doesn't cost you anything to join. You got to use your real name because we don't want to interact with like Bushmaster 007 and kind of other silly internet handles. But, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to have you join us and interact with you. So thank you again for listening. Any last words?
Bye.
Good last word. See ya. You have been listening to the Jack Mountain Bushcraft Podcast. For more information on our professional wilderness guide training programs that are college accredited and GI Bill approved, visit us on the web at jackmtn.com.